Okay, hi everyone. I think firstly, I just want to remark on how Tarik's presentation really laid the groundwork for what I'm going to present. Commons Connect has addressed some of the justice concerns that I'm going to bring up, so that was really heartening to see that there is some application that is considering that. I think the idea about having local socio-political as data points as well, the caste context is really important because data extracted from context can be, dispossession. So that was really important to note. Okay, so I will be taking two case studies that have happened in India, and then using that to introduce the justice concerns that I noticed in AI and climate applications. And these justice concerns can also be applicable to AI for good applications in general. But we're focusing on the climate one because the interrelated justice concern that come up become very heightened all of a sudden. So firstly, I have taken Project Sagu Bagu, which happened in Telangana, and they had 7,000 chili farmers, and it was between World Economic Forum, Government of Telangana, Digital Green, and Center for Industrial Revolution. And so it has been going on since 2022. It had four phases, and the first phase has been widely documented. There's also a WF report on that. It was more difficult to find data about the later phases. So in this, they addressed three, four things. Firstly, they partnered with a lot of startups, and first thing they did was have WhatsApp-based advisory in Telugu language for. So it's like timely data that gives crop advisory and maturity and stuff like that. Then they also had they established labs where you could go take your stuff for testing. Then they also made another market exchange where they eliminated the intermediary, and the farmers could negotiate directly with the people who are going to buy. And then they also, I think, had some computer visioning technology to see soil fertility or something around that. And the results were encouraging. The farmers' income almost doubled, the yield increased, pesticide use also dropped, fertilizer used also dropped. So, from an economic perspective, it was really heartening to see that. However, there are some justice concerns that I'll bring up later. So that is the Sagu Bagu project. Then we go to the other case study which I've taken, which is the India monsoon prediction. So this is the neural GCM model. Google and University of Chicago partnered with the Ministry of State for Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, and they send. So there's this app M Kisan. They use that to send notifications for monsoon prediction. This happened in September last year, and 3.8 crore farmers received these notifications. And again, the results were encouraging because it was able to predict an unusual 20-day dry spell. So that helped farmers plan accordingly. And it was, I think, encouraging to accessibility wise. So many people could reach this information which they could not before. So these are the two case studies I have taken. So there are some limitations here where I do not have all of the data which went in this project. So some of the justice concerns might not be completely accurate from because of the incompleteness of data, but they still point out a pattern that we can just be aware of. So these were the case studies. So I will go into broad observations of what I noticed from these case studies. Firstly, I think the biggest thing that was there was exclusion of traditional knowledge. So in the Sagu Bagu context, there was opacity, so I could not find underlying data sets or anything around that. However, with the neural GCM, everything was open source, so you could look at the data sets. They had the, I think, ERA 5 data set for satellite and everything, and you could see that. So of traditional knowledge, now traditional knowledge becomes extremely important in climate action. And so this is, people have held this knowledge from generations. That is how they understand the land, that is how they interact with it. And so that creates straight up a recognitional and epistemic justice concern. Firstly, that these people, they become passive recipients. They cannot actually engage with the service that is being provided to them. that creates a state of epistemological anxiety, where the something has arrived but they cannot meaningfully engage with it anymore. That creates a digital justice concern as well. So that was there. Not only that this is a recognition justice concern, it also speaks to the incompleteness and inaccuracy in predictions, because as we have noticed that this a lot of AI development can be biased towards Western forms of thinking or like scientific epistemologies, and other indigenous knowledge forms or other more plural forms of interacting are just not acknowledged, and that is also has been noticed in action literature and also the criticisms of neural GCM. So that is the first thing that you have to understand this exclusion is concerning not from a recognitional justice concern, epistemic justice concern, but also just from a reliability and AI safety concern as well. So here there was also a very important precedent has been the Antarctica bowhead whale cases, where the scientists had been trying for a while to ascertain the number, and they kept coming in short and short until they engaged with the indigenous tribes in the area, and then they gave some specific knowledge about their migratory patterns. So that is the local place-based knowledge that is excluded from these sort of development. So that is there. So then secondly, limited local participation. So what I noticed here was, though in one of the case studies they did engage on the ground, they went and they tried to see if people were receiving WhatsApp messages, if it was legible to them or it was timely to them. They tried to match with calendar. That is not enough. That is not complete participation. You are still deciding the information that you give them. So they tried to say that it was a push and pull mechanism, that you could get the information, but a two-way exchanges. If a farmer could actually question it, okay, you have given me this information, why have you given it, what is the basis? There was no explainability. People were not, it was not contextualized that how you have come to this answer. As a farmer, if I from my generations I just know something, you tell me this now, in two cases, either of the cases I am not okay, because in the first case if I rely on what you have given me and it turns out inaccurate because of the incompleteness or just limitations of AI in general, it's not that I could have engaged with that and I am left remedialist. And then let's say I have engaged and it worked out, but I am still left in confusion because I don't know whether I need to trust my forefathers and the wisdom we have held for like centuries, or now what you have given. So in either cases, my agency and my coherence of the world and how I operate is challenged. So this limited local participation is definitely a problem that I've noticed in these things. The M Kisan also, just the notification comes out, there's no way to exchange, there's no way to do anything. It's just a top down sort of a mechanism, and that's why that's very very important, because again in meaningful climate action, meaningful participation has to exist. So that is where that is why it was nice to see Taru's presentation, where they were incorporating, it was becoming a feedback loop, which was not there in either of those. Then ineffective access, where I was talking about digital justice concerns, where it's not just about access to that, it's also about being able to meaningfully use it, which is not coming because of you are excluding their meaning making capacity, and there's not a two-way thing. So that is a digital justice concern. Then allied to that is an algorithmic justice concern. So procedurally there's also opacity. So when you take the chili to testing, they give you some result. I could not find anywhere or any mention that this was contextualized to them, or it was told that how why they came to that. So explainability was missing, black box is there. So that's there. So then inaccuracy is what I was mentioning because of the incompleteness. Now accountability void, this is another very very concerning area, because so okay, let's say you rely on these forecasts that have arisen or whatever information that you've given. What if it goes wrong? Because it can. It's not infallible. It's you cannot. There was no grievance mechanism where you could go to the government and be like, okay, I relied on your thing and it didn't work out. Now what? There was no risk buffering. That also creates a distributive justice concern. The inaccuracy or any sort of a risk that arises from relying on an algorithm is, it lays on this very vulnerable user. So it's like it's so layered, because firstly you exclude their ways of making meaning and their knowledge, then you refuse to let them engage with you or make it change, and then they rely on you, and then you refuse to give them any recourse about it as well. So that's there. Then lack of transparency, of course, lack of transparency about data sets we noticed, and all of that. There was no explainability to the users, but there was also lack of transparency about how these partners were chosen. So with the World Economic Forum, the government of Telangana did put out a document, but in the document they have written that we hold the complete right to reject anyone we select without any reason. We don't feel so. They have stated this specifically. They also say that even if we have impaneled you, we hold the right to completely reject it also without reason. So that is the opacity there. And for the other project, the Google one, I could find absolutely nothing. The only thing I found out was the press information bureau release that it happened. Well, how did the collaboration between Google and University of Chicago and everything come about? So there's opacity about the choice, about the funding. There has to be, something about public procurement. There has to be a tender. There has to be audit. So a lot has to be done that way. That was just not there. Algorithmic opacity. Again, that we people were not. It was not contextualized to them for them to meaningfully engage in. Then also another thing I found out was also the issue with the when you are eliminating the middleman and making the farmers directly engage with these uh, companies or whatever. It is a vulnerable position because they're systemically at a position that's vulnerable. So it's not an equal exchange where they can just negotiate with these companies. And in the document, the Telangana government says that we may assure and facilitate these negotiations, but we have nothing to do with that. And so you are throwing these people in this without the protective structures that the state ought to provide. Or so that was also an issue. So on that, I found 5 form of injustices in these AI for climate applications, which again can also just come with AI for good applications when they are in a public-private form. Or just public form as well, where epistemic justice, this is about the content of the solution, whose knowledge is represented, whose meaning making is considered. So that's there. This is the procedural injustice. This is about the form of the solution. How is it designed? Is it two-way? Is it reciprocal? The manner. So then, distributive injustice. The risk buffering is not there. The risks are disproportionate on the most vulnerable user. Then structural injustice, where this is, how are you choosing the actors who are going to provide this service, and where the farmers were just making, just given to engage with these people with no recourses. And then the last is, so structural injustice is like the context of the solution. Distributive is like the result of the solution, how equitable resources are not actually being given. And corrective injustice is about the aftermath of the solution. What happens when things go wrong? There's no grievance, there's no accountability. So these 4 forms of injustices is what I noticed there. And I try to see it as from a Rawlsian imperative, the least advantaged actor. So we have an image of a farmer where just hit worst in all these 5 areas, and from we have to consider that actor to start making decisions, to start thinking about that. So in order to do that, we would ideally have to subvert this. So epistemic injustice would have to become empowerment. So procedural injustice would have, so there we would have to imagine how to rethink how we are designing and deploying these AI for climate applications. So these were some ideas which can emerge from the discussion and participatory approach. So co-design in participation, co-design also in the sense that you are considering more than the mainstream sort of knowledge epistemologies. And then very important, right of refusal for traditional knowledge, or if they just don't want to engage at all, you have to consider that. Then there's also data governance. If you're taking data, how to handle it, the FPIC protocol for indigenous knowledge, and care principles. A lot has to go there. So that has to come in to address the epistemic part of it. Then participatory two-way feedback labs. So this is the trying to address the design of the solution. And so participatory also, we could again address what was not addressed. The black box has to stop being a black box. Explainability has to come in for it to become more procedurally fair. And then transparency, not in just how these decisions are made, but the broader context of AI and AI's public service at all, like who are the actors you're choosing, why, how can we audit that. Then grievance mechanisms, what happens when things go wrong, who do we go to. And algorithmic error accountability. Okay, so where does it go? The liability, risk buffering, and in equitable resource and infrastructure allocation. So it's not just enough that you are that you're considering them when you're designing this technology. It's also that maybe empower the community itself. Maybe they decide whether they want to make their own AI solutions, providing them the infrastructure, empowering them more. So, and then again, public procurement, so audit. So these are like some of ideas of how we could remedy that. So much work is already going on. So the main point I want to drive home today is, unless we actively address justice concerns in these AI for climate applications, there is a risk of perpetuating extant unjust patterns, because, be it in tech, because tech solutionism, climate solutionism, public goods. So it's this in AI for climate, all of these already injustices come and combine. So we already know that these injustices exist in these domains. When they are combining and forming this least advantaged actor, we really need to take a proactive approach to it so that this does not become a precedent, because you could already see it in 2 of the case studies that have already happened. So I think the participatory approach offers such a direction and the ideas of how we could conceptualize it. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much.